It's not too often that you get to interview the founder and executive director of a global organization, but we get to today. Stephen Jordan from the BCLC, Business Civic Leadership Center. Welcome to your own place.
Thank you so much, Stan. It's good to be here.
As we do this interview, we're sitting actually in the Business Civic Leadership Center at the Added Value in Emerging Markets Conference. How's it been?
It's been great. I just have to say, it's really interesting to bring together companies, government agencies, nonprofit organizations together to talk about driving solutions, identifying projects, and then creating partnerships to make them happen. Can't get better than that.
No, you really can't. Now, I know that we could talk for an hour about a lot of things, but I do want to kind of focus as much as we possibly can on what's happened at the conference, on the emerging markets, and where businesses are going with actually trying to add value in those emerging markets.
Yeah, you know, what we're seeing is that people are starting to really push back on the idea of frontier markets or emerging markets as charity cases. I think that increasingly what you're seeing is people look at Africa and they see a market of 900 million consumers. They say, you know, we don't want to look at them in terms of as objects of pity. We want to say this is potential, this is opportunity, this is the path for the future. If we can help empower the systems that make development take off, you know, we can really create value for the community and value for our company.
So what is this? Is this business? Is this corporate social responsibility? Is this philanthropy?
Yes.
Okay. What does that mean?
Well, you know, sometimes things don't show up on the bottom line, right? But you know that they are good for business. So if you invest in education, in training kids on how to use technology, is it going to show up as, okay, I made 2 cents from my bottom line? Probably not. But what you do know is that by training kids to use technology and by helping them to get skills, that they're going to be more comfortable with technology in the future. It's going to be good, if you're a technology company, for the future of the enterprise. Okay, is that philanthropy? Well, technically, yes. But is it good for business? Well, spiritually or practically, yes.
All right, I'm going to ask you some question now that's going to get you in trouble. Sorry about that, but and I'll preface it with an example. Microsoft is a company that goes into other parts of the world and they provide training through NGOs that helps people, particularly women and young girls, become economically powerful themselves. Are there other examples of companies that are working in emerging markets that you can tell us about?
Oh, are there examples? For example, just take places. For example, in Latin America and the Caribbean, you have companies like, big companies like Starbucks, smaller companies like Dillon Gage, that are working to empower farmers and create new industrial businesses and empowering supply chains. There are companies like Dow that are creating recycling centers in places like Haiti that really didn't have that kind of infrastructure before. There's companies actually like Goldman Sachs, which I know, you know, right now Wall Street's not in high favor with a lot of people, but Goldman is sitting there and they've created this program called 10,000 Women to help empower women and girls around the world, entrepreneurs around the world. Go any single sector, pharmaceuticals, medical supplies, engineering, chemicals, oil and gas, water, agriculture, manufacturing. There's a whole spectrum of folks who are interested in doing work in this space.
What I'm hearing is that there's likely to be some conflict, though, in this. I'm hearing you talk about some business applications in emerging markets. Much of what you're talking about, though, it's not a 90-day turnaround, is it?
No, it's not. And this is one of the issues that has to be kind of negotiated and mediated is what's the payback? What's the payback period? Okay, like we said, giving a kid an education, okay, the payback might not be for what, 10, 12 years, right? Building a health clinic, you know, how is that going to turn around and build up? But the portfolio of a community is intimately linked to the capacity of a individual company to operate within it. And I think that this is what we're really trying to get more specific and gain a better understanding of. It's the relationship between a community's health and a company's health. And how does that work?
So the word I've heard a lot over the past couple of days is sustainability. What is sustainability to you?
Well, there was a contest on Twitter about can you provide a 3-word definition of sustainability? And I just put down better off tomorrow. You know, one of the best ways that you can think about sustainability is the difference between a house of cards and a house of bricks. You know, the story of the 3 little pigs might have it right, and that when you build to last, you know, that's requires a whole different way of thinking, a whole different way of building, a whole different set of materials, tools, than if you're just building for a quick hit today.
Yeah. For the last 25 years, probably even longer than that, of business in the United States, so much of it has been for the quick turnaround. There are constant advertisements that probably we all get in our email inbox about quick turnarounds. Is American business, is global business ready to accept a longer term where there's a return? It takes longer to get a return.
I don't know. I think that we have a fair amount of a lottery mentality. I think we have a situation where we all want to be the superstar without working, and that we want to have things be easy. And I think that we do have to develop a little bit more of a cultural appreciation for hard work and patience. And that's, you know, when you talk about cultural attitudes, that's tough to change around. But if you look at what happened with Japan, do you remember in the late 80s, early 90s, there was this whole thing about how Japan was going to be the #1 economic superpower and all of that kind of thing. And then they've had a decade of no growth as they've really tried to work out their overcapacity that they built. In a lot of ways, the reason why you have a bust is because you are looking for the quick buck and you build things thinking that people will come. And then you're sitting on a lot of inventory until it gets worked through the system, until society catches up to you. So I think that once we get through the conditioning that we can hit the home run without trying or win the lottery ticket, I think we'll be in a better place. But I still think that this is an attitudinal shift that's tough for a lot of people to get their heads around.
So many of the companies, in fact, every single one of the companies that we have talked to here at the Added Value in Emerging Markets Conference have talked about their employee engagement in a lot of the things that they are doing globally. Is that something that you are seeing more of, or is it just a kind of a flash in the pan with a few companies?
No, I think that what you're seeing, the reason why employee engagement is becoming so important is because employee work patterns are changing so much. You know, it used to be that people thought in terms of lifetime employment. You know, I go get a job and I'm there for 40 years and then I get my pension and I'm done. Now, you know, the average person comes out of school and they're thinking within themselves that they'll have 2 or 3 different careers, they'll have 5 or 6 different jobs. You know, people are not, the definition of work is changing. You know, people are not thinking about work as the job, they're thinking about work in a way as part of their life, as part of their fulfillment. So when you talk about employee engagement, what companies are looking for is that they may not expect loyalty from the employee, but what they're looking for is commitment. And if they're able to offer more to the employee than just turning a wrench or whatever, they're much more likely to get a committed employee. So that's why I don't think it's a fad. So
while the definition of work is changing, the definition of philanthropy, corporate philanthropy, is changing too, right?
No, I still think that the definition of corporate philanthropy is staying the same. I think that the strategy of how people apply corporate philanthropy is changing. So the way people are using the tools of philanthropy, of giving away money, is changing.
And what is that change of strategy?
Well, I think that historically, philanthropy was seen as something that was reactive. You know, the symphony comes to you knocking on the door and says, hey, you know, we need some money to keep going. And, you know, as a good business leader, you go, you know, it's good that our community has a symphony, and you give them some money. Now, increasingly, people are kind of scanning their communities and going, what's missing? What do we need to do to improve our community? So the philanthropy, I think, especially on the business side, is becoming more forward-thinking and more about platforms that you can build on other things on.
So is it okay then for a business to have a business goal in its philanthropic strategy?
I think so. Some companies will tell you no, that you've really got to keep the two different, you know, and I think that it probably varies based on business conditions and by industry, whether you answer yes or no. But my general feeling is that if you are doing something in terms of philanthropy as a reactive thing that's not related to your business, that's not likely to be as sustainable for either you or for the charity or the civil society organization that you're helping. And I wouldn't count on it either way. So I think that the more sustainable, i.e. built to last relationships between a business and a civil society partner are ones where the business can see a benefit for the long term, win-win.
What's the role of business in these emerging markets in relation to government?
Are you talking about advocacy, or are you talking about implementing things, or?
That's a great question back, because I'm not sure what the answer is to your question. When businesses go into emerging markets, how do they engage in government, in the local governments, to be able to implement long-term employment opportunities, for example?
Well, let's take an airline, an example of an airline coming into the new country of whatever, of X. So the airline comes into the country of X. What are they there for? They're there to try and provide air transportation for citizens of X. In order to do that, they need to be able to have a place to land. Well, then they got to talk to the government about what the things that they need to do in terms of landing. So there's a permitting thing. There might be a knowledge transfer on the part of the business to say, hey, this has worked for us in other countries in terms of having a place to land. Usually it helps that if it's flat, you know, having different things like that. So I think that companies can help as a knowledge resource. I think that they can help in terms of a design function when you're sitting there planning the architecture of your community. It helps for the planners to know that health clinics, people generally choose health clinics when they're either close to their home or work. Yeah. So where you site your clinics, I think that there's a role in terms of advocacy, saying, look, we do need to improve the schools, and here's why. Because I think businesses that require skilled workers can show you the proof of why there's a benefit to society of educating your people. I think that in addition to that, they can be partners in a limited way on specific projects. But I generally think that companies best serve society by focusing on their core competencies and not drifting into things where they're not that good.
Something else that we've
Call me crazy.
Something else that we've heard a lot about here at the conference is skills-based philanthropy or skills-based volunteering, where companies, instead of giving money, or in addition to giving money, will also lend employees to aspects of emerging markets. Is that something that, I'll ask this question again, is that fad, or is that something new?
I think skills-based volunteering is not a fad. I think it's going to continue to increase, and I'll tell you why. Civil society organizations need it. Startups, entrepreneurs, small businesses need to learn how to do things, and a lot of companies have skilled employees who know a thing or two about finance, about human resource management, about operations, that could then turn around and empower these nonprofits and these small businesses to grow, create jobs, build capacity, and build up the health of the community. Anytime that you get a win-win where you see a benefit on one side of the equation and a benefit on the other, those things tend to be more built to last.
Is there a new relationship on the horizon between businesses and NGOs?
There are new relationships between some businesses and some NGOs. I think that there are some historic relationships that work just quite fine in the minds of some of the people involved with them. So I've got to qualify it. But I do think that what we found from this conference is that civil society organizations might have more value than they know or appreciate. And businesses may actually help them unlock their value more. And conversely, the businesses are starting to realize that they need to be sensitive to some of the social issues that the community, that the civil society organizations focus on. So they can each help inform the other's decision cycles better. I think that could be ultimately very beneficial for all concerned.
You know, something I probably should have done at the start of the interview, but I wanted to get into the meat of the topics as early as possible, but is for those who are watching for the first time, what is the BCLC?
The BCLC is the Business Civic Leadership Center. We're a 501c3 affiliate of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. Our focus is on raising awareness and empowering corporate citizenship in the U.S. and around the world.
You're the founder.
Yes.
And executive director. The
Yeah.
big cheese, if you will. How has it changed?
Maybe something like that.
How has it changed since you started it?
Well, I think that when we started, there probably was more of a focus on philanthropy. And there was more of a focus on how can we get a check out the door and how can we raise awareness about the things that companies do outside of their business to contribute to society. I would say that one of the biggest changes that we've had over the years is that now we're talking much more about the social value of the business itself. And this idea that Microsoft, by providing technology, is contributing enormous social value. Or that Dow Chemical, by creating a recycling plant, is creating enormous social value. So the things that are within the company's wheelhouse are great, and that we're better off as a society because these companies are doing the things that they do. But also the companies are better at deploying the goods and services that they do to benefit society. So you're seeing GE, for example, or Siemens embedding kind of a green sensitivity into the design of their jet engines or their water treatment plants. So they're becoming better at delivering value.
Why are they doing that? Why do they care? Why don't they just try to get every single possible penny that they can in their door?
Well, they do try to get every single possible penny that they can get into their door. But the best way to do that is to be responsive to what people want. So if people want, you know, cleaner water, energy efficiency, buildings that don't waste heat and things like that, then you can bet that the companies are going to try and give it to them. That's the power of the free market.
The power of the public is driving changes.
It's the power of the free market, because interestingly enough, it isn't necessarily the public that's innovating. Do you know, if you had asked me the same question 6 weeks ago, I probably would have said, yeah, the power of the public, the power of the customer, right? But we've really started to get our heads around environmental innovation, for example, and the driver is not necessarily the person on the street. It's actually businesses retrofitting their supply chain. It's the business-to-business market that is actually driving more environmental innovation, interestingly enough right now, than the consumer. If you ask the companies, that's what they'll tell you right now, is they're responding to other businesses.
Huh. The Business Civic Leadership Center right here at the conference has announced two pretty significant tools for businesses. One of them the Business for Good map and the other one the IBC, the International Business Core. Tell us about the Business for Good map.
Well, we are very excited about the Business for Good map as it's developing. The idea is that we know that companies are doing a lot of good things in a lot of different places, but we don't know it, if that makes
All right,
sense.
that's kind of hard for me to understand. Explain
well,
that.
The idea is that intellectually we know, oh yeah, IBM is in 360 different communities doing, developing this kind of technology to empower better traffic congestion. Or we know that there are 17 different companies supporting early childhood education in Pittsburgh. But which are they? And what are they doing exactly in terms of early childhood education? So what we wanted to do with the Business for Good map is really make it concrete and specific about who was doing what. And what we're finding are these amazing patterns, these interesting clusters of activity, so that we're able to tell the companies, hey, did you know that this other company is doing the same thing as you are a block over? And so we're able to get more efficiencies, more effectiveness, but also, interestingly enough, we're able to identify gaps. This grew out of some of the work that we did for Haiti a year ago, in which, for one of the classic examples of this, was that there were a lot of organizations that were really interested in fighting the cholera epidemic. Mm-hmm. And we were able to get from public sources like the World Bank and the UN where the incidence of cholera was highest. It turned out that 95% of the organizations that were working on cholera were in Port-au-Prince, but the highest incidence of the cholera epidemic was in the province north of Port-au-Prince. So there was this real interesting cluster and a huge gap. And because we were able to map who was doing what, we were able to tell companies that were interested in addressing the highest incidence piece of this work that they should operate actually in the province north of Port-au-Prince rather than in Port-au-Prince. It's that kind of quick intel that helps you be more effective, helps stretch your dollar, and helps put your resources in the places where they're needed the most.
What's the IBC?
We are thrilled to be announcing the launch of the International Business Core. You know, 50 years ago, 1961, there was a young president named John F. Kennedy who had a vision called the Peace Corps. And this idea of the Peace Corps mobilized hundreds of thousands of Americans to go overseas and make a difference. Remember, ask not what you can do.
Yep.
And ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country. Well, the International Business Corps builds on that original inspiration. But again, it's about skills, and it's about things that business leaders can deploy specifically to help build capacity around the world.
Okay. It's 2011. In
Good, you know that.
2021, we're coming back. And I'm asking you again, okay, Mr. Jordan, look back at 10 years. Look back to our interview in 2011, and you talked about the Business for Good map, and you talked about the IBC. So now here we are in 2021. How'd you do?
You haven't changed a bit, have you?
Right, I haven't changed.
No, that's what I'm hoping you would say about me. No, I'm kidding. 10 years from now, what I'm hoping is that we're institutionalizing both this high technology solution of the Business for Good map, in which we're able to visualize and see who's doing what, where, and how. And we've also institutionalized this high touch strategy of bringing people to people together much better. And that we're able to look back and say, wow, you know, we've really made a difference in terms of helping Kenya become the next Singapore, or helping Honduras and Bolivia get into the global markets in a much more integrated way, and that we're able to see the distribution of income that you see in more developed countries, where as opposed to the distribution of income that you have in less developed countries, where you have very, very widespread poor population and a tiny elite. our idea is that you start seeing a much more even distribution of income across, and that, interestingly enough, will be driven in large part by the growth and diversification of small business.
Stephen Jordan, founder and executive director of the Business Civic Leadership Center and Global Visionary. Thank you very much.